everyone, my name is Valerie Sizemore and I am Community Group Director here at Viewpoint Church. We're going to be doing a few new things as we really take our community groups to the next level this year in 2018. We're really excited and our desire is for our community groups to really be the heartbeat of Viewpoint Church. So we're going to be doing things a little differently from week to week as you meet in your homes and in your places as community groups. So first off, I'm going to be walking you through our Sunday sermon and the outlines and the questions each week. So your community group leaders will stop and start as they feel needed, or if you have questions or if people have a thought. So use this, tailor it to your own community group, and we hope it's helpful and just something different and really exciting and fun. Okay, so we're going to go through this week's message by Becky, and this message was on the life of Joseph, particularly on the early years of his life from ages about 17 to 30. So he was quite young as she dives into the life of Joseph. But Becky started off this week with her own personal testimony, and guys, wow, if you missed this, if you weren't here, I know a lot of people are sick. Go online, watch the video. We have them online through our website, viewpointchurch.org. Becky came to it. It was so great, so emotional. She just let it go. When she said, buckle your seatbelts, she was not kidding. It was awesome and super emotional and just went really to the heart. She particularly started with her testimony, and then she spoke on studying a different culture, particularly here in Newport Beach, but also on a macro scale, our state, our country, our world. We live in a culture where we are called to be set apart, and sometimes that's hard. So she spoke on setting a different culture here in Newport Beach, and she talked about her 21-day challenge of prayer, of purity, and purpose. If you have not done this, seriously, email me, Valerie@viewpointchurch.org. I will send you the book. I will personally help you out. This challenge, for me, I know, and for many others, changed my life. It really brought me into the heart of Jesus, and it set a completely different course for my life. So this 21-day challenge, do it. I promise you, you will not regret it. So Becky spoke on this culture, on being a Christian in a culture that's not centered around Jesus. And so let's think about this, and we'll take time. Leaders, have your group members go around, everyone just share for a few moments. I know some of our groups are quite large, and some of them are on the smaller side. So if you do have a large group, just tailor that time as needed, and we'll go from there. The question I have for you is that specific to, let's say, Orange County, where we live, most of us live here, or even your particular area, if you're out of town visiting, what are some aspects of our culture here that are difficult for you or that you might struggle with? So take a moment, think about that. What are some of the areas that are difficult for you? And then second to that, follow up that question with this. How has having a Christian community impacted this? Has it made it easier? What do you share the burden with your fellow Christians? Look around you and just take a moment to affirm the Christian community that God has put in your life, and just share in the struggles together. I know personally for me, sometimes being a Christian, especially in our culture, can feel sometimes lonely. And it just because it's not centered around Jesus, and we're called to look different, and sometimes that comes with the territory, right? It can kind of feel lonely, at least for me. I know it does. So when I feel lonely, I actually personally there's two things that come to mind that I want to encourage you as well with. One, when you feel lonely about being a Christian in a specific culture, take a moment and actually feel a little bit encouraged by that, right? Because God tells us that we're not really at home here. We're actually wanderers, is the word he uses. And so it's natural to feel a little different here if we're really living a life of purity and purpose that God wants us to live, right? So I would, just encourage you, sometimes that feeling might just mean you're on the right path. But secondly, I also want to encourage you too that we're not really ever alone, right? We have God with us. We have got Jesus with us. And also look around you. You're sitting in a community of believers who all want the same thing. So really dive into these people, be vulnerable, share, build up relationships, talk about the struggles, talk about the victories too. And so leading into the question I want to ask, and just take a few moments, think about this, pause the video, and then you can start this when you're done. So Becky goes on to describe 4 lessons that when she read through the life of Joseph that she learned. So for a little backstory, for those of you who might have not read this chapter, or maybe just like a refresher, Joseph, he had 11 brothers. Jacob was the father of his 12 sons, who eventually became the 12 tribes of Israel. But about 10 of his 11 brothers, they were crazy people, like really crazy siblings. And also they were super jealous of Joseph, who was Jacob's favorite son. So there was a lot of jealousy, a lot of hurt, a lot of anger going in that family. So what did they do? They threw him in a pit and they sold him into slavery, right? Naturally, what you do to your sibling you're upset with. Just kidding, that's not true. But for a little backstory, Joseph was Jacob's favorite son. Jacob would report also to his father about his brother's crazy shenanigans, which didn't really help their image of Joseph. And so because Jacob loved Joseph so much, he made him this really beautiful coat. And this was kind of like the topping point. His brothers were super jealous. So one time when Jacob sent Joseph to go check on his brothers and see what they were doing, they schemed, they threw him in a pit, and they sold him into slavery in Egypt, right? That's pretty harsh. And eventually, when he was sold into slavery, he found his way to the home of Potiphar in Egypt. But because God was with Joseph through all of this, whatever he did, he succeeded in. So he worked in the house of Potiphar, and because of this, Potiphar's household flourished. And eventually, he was put in charge of everything, which was great. And he thrived there, and everything was going smooth until one day, Potiphar's wife. Apparently, Joseph was a 10 in the looks department. So Potiphar's wife, she wanted him. Well, when Joseph rejected her advances, she trapped him in a room one day, took a piece of his cloak, and then accused him of taking advantage of her. She told her husband didn't like it, husband threw Joseph in prison. And this was one of the prisons of the king. So he would work there, and because God was with him yet again, he was given favor. So eventually, the warden had favor towards Joseph, and Joseph yet again became in charge of everything in this prison. So he was here for quite a while. And then one day, the cupbearer and the one of the bakers for the king, for the pharaoh, got thrown in this jail as well. And they had dreams. And they were distressed. They couldn't figure out what these dreams meant. And Joseph said, hey, interpretation is the job of God. God can interpret dreams, right? Often he gives us dreams, so that makes sense, right? Well, he interprets these dreams. And for the cupbearer, it turns out this was a very good dream for him. What would follow was very good for him. For the baker, well, you can read the story. Doesn't turn out very good for him. But regardless, when the cupbearer is out of prison and makes his way back to Pharaoh, Pharaoh later on has this dream, and the cupbearer says, hey, I forgot. 2 years ago, when I had this dream, this man interpreted it. And so he brought Joseph out of the prison, interpreted this dream, and it ended up being all true. Again, God was with Joseph, and he flourished. He was thriving. He became second in command to all of Egypt, only behind Pharaoh. So in everything he did, Joseph succeeded. So Becky's first point was this: adversity does not mean that God has abandoned you. If we look closely at adversity, we see that adversity is not missing. Look at Joseph's life. He was sold into slavery. Can you imagine being sold into slavery? Yeah, that would put life on hold for a bit. And why might God allow adversity? I know I struggle with this question. A lot of people struggle with this question. But I think we look to stories and lives like Joseph, right? He was in prison. And a baker and a cupbearer, they get thrown in the same jail, and they have dreams, right? And Joseph interprets them, and then he's brought to the Pharaoh, and then he's put in a position of great power. Not only did it save his life, but he flourished in the face of adversity. What was meant to hurt Joseph actually helped him, and I think that's something really important for us to remember as we go through adversity in our own life. Adversity does not mean God has abandoned you. So let's take a few moments and answer this next question as a group. You can go around, take a few moments, each person, and share. Looking in the rearview mirror, share a time in your life that you faced adversity and God actually ended up using it for your good. Point number 2. Destiny is fulfilled when you do not give up on the dream God has put into your heart. Okay, so these were my thoughts on that section from Becky. So we don't waste time on the dream that God has put into your life. God has given us, and we really believe this, God has given us each a really specific dream for our life and into our heart that it's not really meant to go away. And we really should try not to let it go. Whatever the obstacle, God will help you overcome it. So again, look at the story of Joseph and look at his destiny. He changed the world and ultimately set the story for the coming of Jesus Christ. That's huge. And he put that in Joseph's heart and he stuck with it. And he was faithful to the end, even in the face of adversity. So another question here. Take a few moments, talk about it, and then you can come back. The question is, what is one dream God has set in your heart? Okay, so one dream that you feel like is very unique to you. Okay, and these can be big dreams, they can be small. Okay, you can share whatever you feel like. But the second part to this question, but think, how or what do you think it could potentially pave the way for? Okay, so take a few moments, talk amongst yourselves, pause this, and then get back. Hi guys, welcome back. Okay, third point for our outline. Purity will define your relationship with God and with your culture. So Becky hits a home run on this point. So put down your moral standard, you draw that line in the sand and you stick to it. Like Joseph, do not do anything, right, that defames God. Or really your friends, your spouse, your family, your boss, right? Our actions really represent our faith. And this is what I ask myself when I'm about to act on something. If Jesus was sitting right next to me, hanging out in a physical state, right? Sometimes that's easier for me to wrap my mind around. Jesus was hanging out with me in a physical state, sitting right next to me. Would I do this? And I'll tell you what, a lot of times the answer is no, okay? So that really helps me out a lot. Would I watch a TV show like that? Would I listen to that song? Would I talk about a person like that? Would I say that word, use that language? Would I do this or would I not do this? Could you imagine how awkward that could be if you were watching certain movies with Jesus sitting right next to you? I think about that and I'm like, that's really super awkward. So think about that and drive home this point. So the truth is, though, is that he is with us. So it's really important to just remember that, right? And how we behave really reflects our faith and ultimately goes to the heart of Jesus. So we really want to pray into that and just being aware of our blind spots in that way. So here's a question for this section. And this might be a little awkward to answer at first because being a humble person means that we don't brag about ourselves, and we're not going to brag about ourselves. But we are going to do is highlight the beauty of honoring God. So I like this one a lot. The question here is, describe one thing you do that you think pleases God in this way. So what's one thing you do? And if you can't think of something specific, what's one thing you do or one thing about yourself that you think pleases God? And be excited to share this. We're going to highlight the beauty of serving God. Okay, and lastly, the fourth point of Becky's sermon was this: sensitivity to God's voice is given to the young. Joseph said in Genesis 40, God has revealed this to you, Pharaoh. He gave all the credit to God. He said, God revealed it to you, not me. I didn't do this. God did, right? Always turn back the praise to God. That's so cool, and a really cool lesson we can learn from Joseph. So in this culture, purity it's mocked. And all adults and students must be sensitive to God's voice in this area in our lives. God's voice will define our relationship to culture. And one thing I thought was really cool, being a parent now of a baby sleeping in the other room, one thing I thought was pretty cool, Becky talked about the actions of parents that lead to kids living a thriving Christian life. And the number one reason was reading your Bible. And as you guys know, at Viewpoint Church, we really stress the importance of just being in our Bible daily. Spending time with Jesus daily will really change and absolutely shape your life. So we're going to end this time with an activity. So we're going to pray as a group. And specifically pray for our culture. Okay, we got a lot of crazy things going on right now. Pray for our culture, pray for our youth, and pray for God to show us the ways in which we are to be set apart. And pray for the guts and courage to just surrender to this and listen to God's voice and surrender and lay it all down to Jesus, right? So take a few moments. You can pray corporately as a full group. That's really cool. I like to do that sometimes. Or you guys can decide you can break down into smaller groups and pray for more specific items related to this too. And even take a few moments, share any outstanding prayer requests that you guys have. We love you guys. Thank you so much for all the work you do, for your commitment, for your loyalty, for your love for Viewpoint Church. We just love you guys. And thank you just so much. Seriously, you guys, it's so good to be a part of Viewpoint. And I know we love you guys. So have fun, enjoy the fellowship, and I'll see you next week. Okay, bye. Oh, hello. I didn't see you there. My name is Valerie Sizemore, and I am Community Group Director here at Viewpoint Church. And I also have a very lame sense of humor, so please laugh at my jokes. I have loud neighbors. Love thy neighbor as thyself.